Open your mind.
Hello and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday the 24th of August and I don't know, the weather's getting a bit of a change. Last night apparently they recorded 1 degree in Northern Ireland, weather-wise cold. And this is August 24th. And that's very strange. I mean, even, my other half was saying last night that it feels a bit cold. And I thought, well, this is August 24th, shouldn't be cold. But apparently they recorded 1 degree in Northern Ireland last night. So
that's interesting. But then again, you know yourself, when the kids go back to school, which depending on where you are, it's going to be next week here. All the schools are back, national and secondary schools are back. And normally when the children go back to school, we generally have a week or maybe 10 days of good weather. So let's keep our fingers crossed for that one. But 1 degree in Northern Ireland.
Not good at all.
No, it's not.
Okay, on the show in about 10 or 15 minutes we have Sarah the Lioness. Now Sarah has a book out called So They Say You've Broken the Law, Challenging Legal Authority, and we're going to be talking to Sarah all about that because it's quite interesting. It's more in relation to do with the police, but we'll be probably expanding that up and talking about a few of the bits on the legal side because more and more people are beginning to study the law, understand the law, and use the law, in the courts and stuff like that. And a lot of people are having success with it. So we'll talk to Sarah in a few minutes about that. But until then, let's find out what the communication channels are.
Okay, Mary, communication channels, please.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Okay, and we're back. We do apologise for that technical glitch that happened. But we are back, and the phone number is 046 927 1212. We are back streaming on all 3 streams. Thank God for that. If you want to ring in from outside the Republic of Ireland, it's 00353 469 271212. We also have the chat book on the chat book, or the chat room, even, on the website as well, oymradio.com, and click the live chat button and you can join in there. There's already several people logged in. I'll say hi to you all, and you can post questions there for a guest this evening. Again, apologies for that technical glitch at the beginning of the programme. Alan?
That's okay. We have an idea what it might be. It's just down to a software driver for one of the devices here. So I think what we're going to have to do is it's either the driver or the actual USB connection. So what we're going to do is during the week I'm going to be swapping that out for a standard a different type of connection. Hopefully that will sort the problem, or hopefully eliminate the problem. Okay, so let's crack on. So just a few minutes, but there you go. These things happen. They're called glitches. Can't do anything about that. Right, Steve's going to tell us about Russia Today, aren't you, Steve?
Yes, I'm going to tell you about... Seemingly there was a programme on Russia Today during the week, and they had Paul Hellyer, the ex-Minister of Defence there in Canada, and he was being interviewed by Sophie and company about ETs. Now, we've often spoke about ETs on the show here at OYM before, and we've had guests on who've spoke about it, and how real that they are. And, now I know we get a lot of stick, and some people say, oh, not the ETs again, and the flying saucers and the tinfoil hats. But, we do kind of talk about everything here at OYM, and the fact that Russia Today, a mainstream news media outlet, they're actually discussing it as well. I mean, kind of makes you wonder, either they're following in our footsteps, or maybe there's something to all this.
Exactly. Well, they had Stephen Greer on Russia Today as well. Abby Martin was interviewing Stephen Greer. So, and people have their own opinion of Stephen Greer, but the subject matter was that they were talking about stuff, the ETs and all that. So it was quite interesting that they're actually doing that. Nice to know that a big kind of network like that is actually taken on board and talking about it. Doesn't mean they have to accept it, but they're talking about it anyway. Now, the other thing that I came across during the week, which is quite interesting after kind of last week's fiasco, was that the article says here, a CIA-sponsored trolls monitor social media and interact with users to discredit factual information. Yeah, well, we know that, and as we normally say, if you're not being attacked, you're not trying hard enough. So, obviously, last week we were trying very hard. And we had a good subject matter there. So, but there you go. That's just one of the things that was mentioned during the week, which is quite interesting. The other thing that was that we came across during the week was Ireland is introducing new laws. Now, whether are they introducing it, are they resurrecting new laws? Probably introducing new laws. And I'm going to read it out here because it says, I mean, it's quite frightening. I mean, talk about Orwellian. And it says, the third of 3 laws to be introduced. And it says here, any person who recruits another person for an unlawful organisation, or who incites or invites another person or other persons generally to join an unlawful organisation or to take part in, support or assist its activities, shall be guilty of an offence and shall be liable, on conviction, on indictment, to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years. Now, it says, what does the Offences Against the State 1939 describe as an unlawful organisation? Now, that's a good question. Now, this is in the Irish statute books, okay? So I'll read out the URL. You can check it out yourself. It's www.irishstatutebook.ie/1939//sec0018.html. Steve is going to type it in the chat room. And it says here, define unlawful organisation. Well, it says here, unlawful organisation, in order to regulate and control in the public interest the exercise of the constitutional right of citizens to form associations. It is hereby declared that any organisation which promotes, encourages or advocates the non-payment of monies payable to the central fund or to any other public fund, or the non-payment of local taxation. So any group that you're involved in that might be against maybe the water charges might be included in that, I don't know, because I know it's a private company, but there's acts and statutes that they have brought in on the legislation regarding the water and the property tax and, well, anything that goes against the government getting money. And if you're in a group or organisation or society, then obviously you're going to be deemed as a terrorist, probably more than likely. Now, that needs to be pulled apart, and I'm sure Vin is probably going to pull that apart on the show sometime, because it needs to be pulled apart, because, you know, it's just, I think there's parts in there that are very vague, and we should try and pull it apart. But there you go. So, if you're in an organisation that goes against the government, I mean, talk about Orwellian. We're really kind of going down that road, you know. But, Steve, how's your week?
Yeah, I'm just redoing that URL. I'll do it in a moment. I typed and I mistyped it. I put Irish Statute STAT. Hang on, IRISH STATUTE. No, I didn't misspell it. Okay, well it's not working. I must have done something wrong. I will check it again. ENACT pub 00.
Don't worry about it. How's your week?
I'll do it again in a minute. Yeah, no, my week's been fine. What have I got to say? Just a couple of things. I spoke to Alan when I come up to the studio there a while ago, and we were talking about this thing that's kind of going around Facebook at the moment, doing the rounds, and it seems to be gathering momentum. Sheep are following the sheep are following the sheep. It's the Ice Bucket Challenge. Now, I mean, look, what is it? I mean, a couple of weeks ago we were all complaining about the Irish water and the charges that they want to levy on people. We've only recently heard that when they were saying it was going to be a minimum of like €240 for a household with 2 adults. Now, they kind of erred on the side of caution there. Now that they've kind of found out that it's going to be a little bit more than that, probably around €270, €280. And if you have a couple of kids in there, instead of being whatever they said, you're looking at more like €500 and something. So, you know, a lot of people who are willing to pay these charges are also going out and doing this ice bucket challenge. So they're filling up their buckets and they're pouring water over themselves. Okay, it's for a good cause. They have to donate then a couple of euro to, I think it's motor neuron disease. And don't get me wrong, that's a great cause. It is. I looked after a man years ago who had it, and you know, I seen where his life went. But I just don't know. Is it worth doing? I mean, could we not just have something else? I'm not advocating that we should, you know, have people, I don't know, shoving bangers up their nose or anything like that. But you know, it's a great little marketing ploy. I say, look, it's a good cause, but there's just so many people doing it and getting nominated and all this carry on, and I just don't know where it's going to end. Actually, Alan and I were nominated too, and the jury's still out on that one. But I've a funny feeling we're not going to be wasting the water.
Well, there's a video going around the internet, and a guy actually did some research into the ALS, and he found out that something like only 8% of the funds raised actually went to research, and everything else went into salaries and marketing and all that kind of stuff. So, you have to question again charities and all that. Now, I know this has nothing got to do with the condition, just where the money goes and how it's invested,
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I know for a fact, because I've experienced that a lot of these people who are out standing with buckets collecting money for various different charities, they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're not getting paid for it. But you're right in what you say. When the money goes back, only a portion or a percentage of it is actually going to where it's supposed to be going, and the rest is getting used for different purposes. But look, we're just going to have to watch it and see what happens. The funny feeling I won't be doing it. I'd rather just send the water over to someone who actually needed it, like a poor child who doesn't have any water in some other country. I'm sorry. I just feel it would be better spent if we done something positive. And I'm getting it wrong now. I mean, donating to a charity is a good cause, but wasting water is not. What else? Sinead O'Connor's in the news as well. Seems she's calling for a revolution in Ireland. I was actually reading that on, I think it was the Irish Independent, their online edition. She's calling for a revolution in Ireland, and then she goes on to give her reasons as to why. After reading the article, I have to say I wouldn't be Sinead O'Connor's greatest fan, but I wouldn't dislike her or hate her either way. But she made a lot of valid points, and I love reading when you go to the end of the article, you see the people's comments. I love reading the comments just to hear what the general concession, what people think. A lot of people seem to agree with Sinead, and they're just they're not going to strike the match to like the revolution, but they're happy enough. They seem to be happy enough to join in if and when it starts. Of course, there are the naysayers, and there was a lot of people on there as well, kind of slating Sinead and saying, commenting on stuff that she might have said in the past, years and years and years ago, and bringing that and trying to put it into context into what she's saying today, and saying, oh, we can't believe that, and she says, because look what she said 10 years ago. Maybe Sinead O'Connor has a fluid belief system like us. Maybe something she said 10 years ago, maybe she wouldn't say the same thing today. Maybe something she supported back then, she wouldn't support it today. So yeah, we'll see what happens there anyway. What else? I seen an article actually during the week as well. I believe it was Fox News. I might end up standing to be corrected on that one, but it was about people who send and post pictures of their children on Facebook from their smartphone or their iPhone or their tablet. Now, what they're saying is in this thing on Fox News, this news piece, was that they got a smartphone, they gave it to a mother, she took a couple of pictures of her children in different locations, and she uploaded them to social media. There was a guy up there with the aid of Firefox browser and a couple of plugins. They didn't actually name the plugins, but what he was able to do was he was able to, just from our pictures, he was able to use this piece of software, view the properties of our picture. They actually seen the location, the coordinates. He was able to map the coordinates. Not only that, he was able to kind of tell, don't ask me how, but he was able to tell what room in the house she was in when the images were taken. And they were able to go to the mother and present her with this information and say, that picture was taken in your child's bedroom, second picture was taken outside the school, in a burger place, and they were able to give all the locations. And they said those tools in the wrong hands will be bad. So they were urging people that if you do have a smartphone or an iPhone or any device, that if you're going to be taking pictures with it, turn off your location identification. They say, like most people should know, it's in the settings. And just turn it off. Once that's off, then you should be good to go, and all your pictures should be, they just go up on the net, and it'll just be a picture. There'll be no alternative information stored on the file. And the last thing, I had some success in work during the week. Without even trying, I had one person in the job come up to me and ask me to explain return to sender. So I did, and I had a quiet little yay moment, a little victory, I thought. So yeah, that was good, and that's pretty much my week in the nutshell.
Did they say what the return to sender was in relation to?
TV license.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah,
no
there's
problem,
someone there's someone who is kind of going down that road at the moment. Well, they're not going down the road. They just asked me, could I just explain how it works, what I've done, and how many people have come banging at my door. And I told them exactly what I've done, and that no one has come banging on my door because I've removed the right of access, their employed right of access.
Okay.
Right.
I do have a funny feeling that they're not bothering me with the TV license because they're working on a new broadcast license at the moment. So they're kind of saying, look, leave that. Let's just focus on the broadcast. So I do feel that that's going to be kicking in. But funny enough, on my week, I know you're going to say that.
How was your week, Alan?
I can read your mind. I knew you were going to say that.
You read my mind. You can also read the script.
Shh, we're not supposed to have a script. Right, okay, before I get into any information, we'd just like to say a big, big congratulations to Aisling, and the girl against fluoride. She's going to become a mammy. So she just posted that up on Facebook earlier, so we thought we'd give a... There is a thing going around Facebook, though. I wasn't too sure whether to believe it. And I don't know, it's very strange. Things that you're given some kind of questions, 5 questions, and you have to pick one of them. And they're very strange. And I thought, is that one of these kind of gamey things on Facebook, or is it true? So if it's true, congratulations, Aisling, and you're a partner. And if it's not true, sorry, you've just told the world that you are. So, but I'm sure she is. Okay, the other thing, a couple of things before we bring our guest in, Sarah, is that the aviation authorities are on alert at the moment with the Icelandic volcano erupting. Iceland closed airspace directly above Bardarbunga. That's
well said.
Bardarbunga volcano yesterday after it began to erupt. So obviously, if you remember a couple of years ago, that happened before. It was quite bad, and all the ash cloud and the planes were stopped flying and everything else. And the social services couldn't understand why there was so much money that there wasn't collected on the 3 days that they had no planes flying. I wonder why. Work that one out. All right, so we don't know how bad this is going to be. We're going to keep an eye on that as well. Now, the other thing as well is that Yellowstone, I don't know whether you've been watching that, but Yellowstone as well. The experts are also concerned about Yellowstone, the caldera, as it has exhibited a sudden spike of activity and could erupt within 2 weeks. That's what they're saying. But the scientific community are split on when it will erupt. So some people are saying 2 weeks, other people are saying a couple of months, whatever. So the thing is, they do agree that it's going to happen. They just don't know when it's going to happen. Some are saying a few weeks, some are saying a few months. Yeah, but you probably know about the melting of the roads. You've heard that, and everybody's been. You can't go into it now, and there's a lot going on. So if that, the Yellowstone caldera does actually go off, along with the Icelandic volcano, well, we're going to have a lot of fun, and there's been other kind of sinkholes and things happening around globally. The weather patterns are definitely changing. So very, very strange. Now, just one more thing before we bring our guest in. There's a website called meltingpress.com. And again, it was talking about the corruption in the Garda Síochána. Now, we know about this. We know about John Wilson, the whistleblower, coming out and saying what was going on. And the meltingpress.com have said, it's clear to anyone of sound mind that the Irish police force have become corrupt and unaccountable. What may have started as a fairly trivial investigation into the systematic erosion of penalty points has underpinned what many have believed for some time now. The Gardaí are above the law and they purport to uphold. I think we can all kind of agree on that. Now, I'm not going to tar all Gardaí with the same brush, of course, because there's Gardaí in there that want to do a good job. They joined the Gardaí to do the job they were supposed to do, and they are being pushed and manipulated and controlled and kept quiet by the powers to be. Now, I did see a video today. I think the 1916 Society had a get-together in Glasnevin Cemetery, as far as it looked like Glasnevin Cemetery anyway. And there was a chap there that was talking to the police. He didn't want to give his name because he said, well, I didn't do anything. And of course, as usual, they just go in with the heavy hands and they drag him into the car and they arrest him. For what reason? I mean, the guy didn't do anything. The video's on YouTube. You can actually see it. Again, I don't really get it why they're conditioned like this. I mean, I do believe there's a level of NLP used in their brainwashing and their indoctrination, and I do think that they're not going to get the respect of the people unless they start respecting the people themselves. It's that simple. They have to use common sense. That's it. They just have to use common sense. And I mean, if you look at what's going on in America, it's just crazy over there, over in Ferguson, what's going on. And they're saying that they just sue, plants in the crowd as well, causing a problem because they want to bring in martial law and a police state. And they're trying to set it off over there as well. Race wars as well, that's what they're trying to do. So we just have to be on our guard when it comes to that, and just be aware that any provocateurs, any meeting that's together with a group of people and people are trying to cause trouble, just have to walk away from them, because it should be peaceful protest, always peaceful protest. That's the way it should be. So, but anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to bring Sarah in. Now, Sarah the Lioness has wrote a book, a very successful book apparently, and it's called So They Say You've Broken the Law, Challenging Legal Authority. And we're going to find out about her experiences dealing with the police and what she would recommend. So, good evening, Sarah. How are you?
Hello, hi. Lovely to speak to you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for coming on. We did get, as I said before the show, the information, I don't know whether I've seen a video with Ben. You're going to give me his last name now. I forget.
Lowry.
Ben Lowry, yeah, exactly. And I thought the interview was very good because you were talking about your experiences, about what you went through. And I thought, well, this would be great to have Sarah on the show to talk about her experiences, her knowledge, and her, if you have any solutions and what you feel is the right way to do things. Now, I know there's kind of two sides of the coin. You have the Freeman stuff and then you have the kind of legal stuff. And a lot of people have tried the Freeman stuff, and I think in most cases it probably hasn't worked. They've just been ignored, and maybe one or two cases people have been lucky. But what we'd want to obviously try and focus on is the kind of legal stuff and what you can do, and using their system against themselves. But before we do that, Sarah, tell us a bit about your experiences and about yourself.
My experiences?
Well, tell us about you, who you are, and your background and your work and what you did, and then obviously we'll go into the kind of the legal side of things.
Right, well, it's pretty boring. I've been a lone parent, brought up my children, worked always. I worked in business and management training. Then I went on to work for the probation service, setting up a couple of drug testing pilots for them. And it was really doing that made me just see how the criminal justice system was re-criminalising people already in the system. And I just thought, this is just so wrong. And really that's what made me start thinking about things and looking at things.
Right, okay. And so you've seen people being arrested for no apparent reason. And
well, yeah, it wasn't so much that. It was the fact that we were piloting new legislation for the Home Office, and it was drug testing. So if anybody had been arrested for anything, not drug related, anything at all, whatever anybody was arrested for, they were then drug tested. And if it showed a positive for Class A drugs, so that's your opiates, your heroin and crack and cocaine, if it showed a positive, then they were immediately given a sentence. They had to go to court and they were given this drug abstinence orders or drug testing orders. And I thought, but this is nothing to do with the, what they'd done. It might have been a parking, ticket or an argument or a shoplifting or whatever it was. But what we were testing, this pilot system, was this new system that everybody got mandatory drug testing. And of course, the percentage of those people were your heavy, hard-use heroin addicts who've been using for 20 years. But what this this legislation we were piloting said that they had to go back for drug testing every 72 hours, come back to us, me and my team, and every 72 hours. And if they proved positive, they would be called a breach of that order that they'd be given in court, and two breaches effectively, and you're out. You're either back in court again, charged with breaching that legislation, or if you were out on license, you go straight back to jail. And through what we were doing, at least 8 people just got sent to jail for doing nothing except that they'd failed this new legislation which the government thought they would test out. And I thought, this is just so wrong.
But that is wrong. I mean, if somebody's got a parking ticket or a speeding ticket and, you know, they went to court over it and they were drug tested when it's nothing got to do with drugs.
Well, it was if they were arrested, yes. If they were arrested for anything whatsoever, it was because we were piloting this thing down in Torquay where I am, and it was being piloted in Swindon and a number of other places. This is how they do it. They test out legislation. They choose a certain area with certain demographics, depending on the legislation, and they test it out. And I thought, this is just the luck of the draw, you know, because if this had happened to someone in London or Bristol where they weren't doing the test, for example, they wouldn't have been recriminalised the way that we were with people here. And it was just so dreadful because people who have, say, a serious heroin addiction, they're on 10 bags of heroin a day and they have been for 20 years. To say to someone like that, you know, effectively, thou shalt not use or you're going to go to jail. Well, of course they use. You know, when they come back in 72 hours' time and I say, have you used? I've got to test you now. And they'll say, well, yeah, of course I have, you know. Of course I have. I'm an addict.
But that's just madness, Dad. And where's the kind of, do you consent to this drug test? I mean, was that any time where they asked that question?
Not by me. No, consent wasn't an issue. It was a court order. The court had ordered it, and if you fail a court order, you go to jail. And also, if you fail your drug test and it proves positive, you go to jail or to court or wherever the court has directed them to go. But it was the fact that this law was designed to recriminalise people who were already in the criminal justice system for something that they hadn't been accused of, if you see what I mean. They hadn't been arrested for anything drug related, yet here we were picking them up and then prosecuting them for that. And I just thought that was terrible. I thought it was dreadful. And I left in the end. My own conscience couldn't allow me to continue.
That's just madness. Now,
but it still happens. It's now rolled out all over the country. It was seen as a great success.
Right, and that means that obviously they're going to be taking DNA as well then?
Well, we weren't. No, they were saliva tests, but they weren't keeping the DNA, no.
Okay.
They were numbered.
Not yet.
I'm not saying they don't now. This was in 2002.
Yeah, well, the whole kind of microchip culture. I mean, whatever way they choose to, you know, either have an ID card, whether it's saliva, DNA, microchip, ID card. I mean, that's their plan to have everybody on the database so they can track everybody down and keep a track of people. Tell us about your actual experience and run-ins with the police.
I haven't really had any other than the one that you heard on the Ben Lowry, and I'll repeat that if you want your listeners to hear that. I'll repeat it quickly for you.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd just been up on holiday with some friends up in Herefordshire, and I wasn't feeling very well. And a friend of mine was coming back, and I said, will you give me a lift home? And he said, yes. So we were just driving back home. And everything was fine. I was sort of dozing off. It was about 1:45 midnight. And, you know, when you're sort of dozing and the cars stop at traffic lights and they stop at red lights, you don't really notice much. And the first thing I noticed was somebody hammering on the door, and it was pitch black out. And two men I could vaguely see, all in black, yelling, get out the car, get out the car, get out the effing car. And I'm saying, who are you? Who are you? And they said, get out the car, get out the car. And I didn't know who they were. I thought we were being robbed. It was pitch black. The car was stopped. And luckily, because I'd been on holiday, I got my camera with me, my video camera. So I popped it up on the dashboard and switched it on. It wouldn't see anything, but at least it could record the sound. So I have got a recording of all this. And basically they kept saying, we're police, get out the car. And I kept saying, well, can I see some ID? And they just escalated the aggression, and who are you, and demanding, and we were both saying, well, you know, am I obliged to answer your questions, you know? And they were saying, well, no. I said, well, then I won't then, if you don't mind. And they said, if you don't get out the car, we'll arrest you. And I was sort of still busy saying, well, who are you? Can I see some ID? And in the middle of a sentence, you can hear me say, like that, because they sprayed us with that mace or whatever they call it, powder spray, in the face, inside the car, while we were sitting there minding our own business, inside the car.
That's madness. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's just them exceeding the jurisdiction, definitely. You know, that's...
Yeah.
So what happened next?
It all went downhill from there. Then when I couldn't see, they came round to my side of the car and opened the door. And there wasn't much room because my friend had pulled in sort of next to a hedge. And so they pulled me by my hair back out of the car, round to the back of the car. And they called for backup by this time, and somebody came and physically searched me and searched my things. And then they got my friend Mike out and were busy beating him up. And I wasn't handcuffed or anything, and I went over to see him, to see what was going on. And this one who'd maced us in the face said, "You're not going over there." And I said, "Are you physically stopping me witnessing an assault?" And he actually said to me, and this is a direct quote, "You're in custody now. You've got no rights."
Right. Okay.
So it's a bit chilling in the midnight when there's two of them have done this, and they're beating up my friend. Anyway, I think they broke his wrist. They'd certainly tore some tendons. He was in a bad way, and maced him in the face as well. And he had a terribly bad reaction to it, much worse than I did. Anyway, then they wait for it. "Oh, look, we found cannabis in the car." "Oh, yeah, right. Have you?" "Yeah." So they said. So then we were both arrested for suspicion of possession of cannabis. These were all only suspicions. And then I had some old rubbish in the back, and I said, that's mine. It was some driftwood. And then they decided they would arrest me and say that was a loaded shotgun.
What, driftwood?
Yeah. Yeah, full of rubbish that was dug up when we were on holiday. So off we were carted to the police station, still in shock. I'm still not well because I was being brought home because I wasn't very well. I have stomach ulcer problems.
Yeah.
Refused me any medication. They even refused me toilet roll for 19 hours. Kept the lights on. I was in there 3 days and 3 nights with the lights on, 24/7 in solitary confinement. And then chained and handcuffed and taken off in the big van to the court, where because all along they kept saying, "Who are you?" And I kept saying, I'm not obliged to assist you, am I? And they kept saying, "No." I said, "Well, then I'm not. You've kidnapped me. You have kidnapped me. You've made up charges. You've made up all nonsense, and it's all nonsense because you keep saying, 'Tell me who you are and comply with your orders.'" And I said, "And I'm not legally obliged to do so, and I'm not lawfully obliged to do so, am I?" And they kept saying, "No." And what's the first thing they tell you when they arrest you? They say, "You've got the right to remain silent."
Yeah.
So you have. And I said, "So you've done this unlawfully, and all of this is unlawfully. I'm just minding my own business, a passenger in a car, for God's sake."
Yeah.
And I've been locked up for 3 days. I said, "No, I'm sorry, but I'm just not going to assist you. I'm not going to comply with you. Nobody in their right mind would comply with kidnappers." And I'm not. I'm just not.
Yeah.
And they kept saying things like, "Well, don't you want to get out of here?" Sort of tactics, oppression tactics.
Yeah.
And I just looked at them and smiled, and I just said to them, and you could see them really fuming but not able to do anything. I just smiled at them and I said to them, "Everyone's got to be somewhere, love."
Yeah.
They really didn't like it because I just wouldn't be intimidated.
Yeah, and I think they had that issue with Guy Taylor. I think Guy Taylor, they wanted him to sign himself out so we could, they could use that information because Guy Taylor's gone through a few issues with the police there the other day, and again Guy refused to sign the anything got to do with the police. And
I didn't sign anything or do anything or
Yeah.
tell them anything. I wasn't rude, I wasn't aggressive, I was just talking to them the same way as I am to you now.
Yeah.
But I was just adamant that there was no way I was going to assist them. And they kept coming in and trying to call me different names. They kept coming and calling me Claire and different things. They obviously thought that I might be something to do with my friend, and his wife was Claire. They found some documents of his. Was I her? And I kept saying, I'm not here to lie to you. I'm not hiding who I am. I said, I'm just simply not going to assist you. That's all. If you find out who I am, then crack on. But I am just not going to assist you because you have kidnapped me.
So
it's as simple as that.
So even if they need to get subject matter jurisdiction, and even if they found out your name, would you confirm that to them?
Yeah, I've got no problem with that. I wasn't being difficult, and I wasn't being obstructive, because of course you can be accused of obstruction, which is what I then was. They arrested me for the alleged cannabis, which obviously fell by the wayside when they realised it wasn't, and they arrested me for the alleged loaded shotgun, which obviously it wasn't, and that fell by the wayside. But they charged me with obstruction, and that's why I had to go to court. And when it came out, that you're going to have to go through the court proceedings, who had charged me and what? Well, the woman who had charged me with obstructing her, get this, you're like this, she wasn't even there.
Wow. It's unbelievable what they do, isn't it? Unbelievable what they do. So So you, after the 3 days, what happened?
I was taken to the court and I had to give them my name and address, and I said, I'm not doing this, I'm not playing. And they said, well, you're going to stay in jail until you do then. She said, because we don't know who you are, and we don't know if you've done anything wrong, and we don't know why you're trying to hide who you are. So we have to keep you there because we can't let you out. And I said, but you've taken my handprints, my fingerprints, my thumbprints, my palm prints, my DNA, and my photograph against my will. And you've run all that by, and you found that I've not done anything. So, I didn't do anything before, during, or after the fact. But you're still telling me that I'm going to be kept in jail until I do comply. And she said, yes. So I thought, well, I can't do much from in here. Yeah. So I said, all right, well, I'll tell you, you haven't arrested me, you haven't kidnapped me, so I'll tell you, which I did. And before I got home, before I'd walked home, there was a letter on my doorstep from the police. They'd obviously been that quick that they got the details and put it into their database and sent me a letter saying I have to go to see them on bail on whatever day it was. Cheeky buggers. Anyway, they dropped it all. But when you were talking earlier, before I came on here, you were just saying about how the police and the guards do things and get away with it all the time. And I know why they do it.
Why?
They do it is because people do not stop them. I could have moaned about what happened to me. I could have gone away and had a damn good complaint about it. But no, I am taking them to court. And it's been 3 years and there's been a hold up because there's been an IPCC investigation, which was an absolute whitewash. They all lied and changed their statements, so they've all got the same lie now, which completely contradicts their original statement. So it's all a nonsense, but it was a whitewash, and it took all this time. But I am taking them to court. It is happening. It has been happening since about 3 days after I got out. It's just been stayed. But you've got to complain. You've got to take them to court. You've got to make it financially not worth their while, because they do this all the time. All the time they're stopping people. Where are you going? What are you doing? And people are getting arrested because they're just not helping them or whatever, for nonsense, for nothing. Every time that goes through the court, there's £7,000 made by each lawyer each time, and there's £3,000 made by each judge each time, and the CPS makes money, and the courts make money, and the orderlies make money, and the system. Yeah. It's a good financial system that everybody who goes in that one court door and out the other court door, it's ka-ching for them. So you've got to go back in and you've got to take them to court, and you've got to make it financially not viable for them to do this. Yeah. And you've got to complain, and you've got to take them to court every single time. Doesn't matter what they do, have them again and again, because the very few people that do that, it's not worth their while stopping. They make so much money by behaving outside the law that they've got nothing to lose. For the 3 or 4 people, a handful of people that do bother to do something, it's chicken feed to them. They've made so much money, and that's why they do it, because it's just about money. It's because they can. Well, because we let them. We let them.
We have said this on the show, and it's something that is kind of I'm not saying it's in the pipeline, but it was mentioned of a seminar or training that we're talking to people over here regarding about doing a seminar and teaching people how to actually sue the police, sue the guards for breach of rights. At the end of the day, you have to do this. I mean, I've said this on the show before. A family member of mine went down that road with a nephew of mine who was wrongly accused. He did nothing, and it was a made-up charge. And to cut a long story short, she pursued the police. I mean, even the solicitor, who's in the same law society and club, said, "Oh, you don't, just leave it." And she said, "No, I'm going to have this guard. I'm going to bring them to court." And she did, and they won the case. basically, and
They do. They do. If you know you're right, you're going to win if you present your case properly.
Yeah, and so one of the things that, and because it's a lot of people don't know about the court system and how it works, it's a bit of a black art, how to, go in and sue somebody for breach of rights. Then what we're going to try and do is, as I say, we're talking to somebody about this, about doing seminars and educating people about what to do and how to do it. Because at the end of the day, if the police perform, if the Gardaí perform and do their job and don't breach your rights, then there's no issue. It's only when they step over the mark, step out and exceed their jurisdiction because they think they can do it, that they get away with it. So if more and more people were to say, you're exceeding your jurisdiction, you're banging out of order, I want your details because I'm going to sue you because you're breaching my rights, and then follow that up. Because the other thing which I heard, and I don't know how true this is, but any Garda police officer who has had a report or something on their something about them personally, if it happens, it goes on their record anyway. So that's not good for them if they want to climb the ladder and get promotion. If there's a lot of people putting in complaints and reports about the same individual, it doesn't.
Yeah, complaints and reports can get filed away or ignored, but court cases can't.
Well, yeah, that as well. Just do the whole lot,
I think people need to be aware. They're very wary when people say about seminars and people are always contacting me and saying, can you do this, will you do that? And I just say, no, I do not give legal advice and I will not give legal advice because I get asked probably 60 times every day for different people and you can't do it all. And I'm not qualified to do that. And it's a big responsibility for me to say, well, you should do this, that and whatever, and then it fails. So it's a dodgy area. But I think if you don't know what you're doing, why on earth would you be doing this? You called it a black art, and I don't see it that way at all. I think it's quite a beautiful thing in a sick sort of way. It's sick because it's been corrupted, but I used to say their courts and their laws, and I don't see it that way at all anymore. I decided I'd do a law degree and starting a law degree and learning what a legal argument is over anything else. And you start to look at things, you're taught to look at things forensically. You're taught to look at what is rather than what you think is or what you think should be. You just go with what is, and of course what isn't, what is missing.
Okay,
but you start looking very clearly, and when you start saying that you're going to teach someone a seminar to do this, well, it takes lawyers, 5, 6, 7 years to learn how to do this, and a barrister who then going to present a case another 6 years maybe. So for anybody who thinks that they're going to go to an hour or an afternoon or a weekend seminar and know how to win in the court system, it's a very naive thing to expect. But there are certain ground rules which I'm happy to advise anybody on, and there are certain ways you can teach yourself to do, not so much to do the right thing, but not to do the wrong thing.
Yeah, well, as I say, the seminar, number one, would not be legal advice because it wouldn't be coming from anybody in that profession. It'd be just information, and it would be an overview because you cannot. This area, there's so many different ways that you can go with it. There's no way you're going to learn how to do it. There's not ABC. It'd be just purely an overview of the process you have to take to do it. How you go about putting your case together, that's something else completely. But if somebody says to you, right, I want to sue somebody, what do you do? Well, they say, well, you go down to the court and you get this out and you fill this out. What information you put on the documentation is down to you because it's going to be unique to you and you're going to have to deal with that and you're going to have to present your evidence. But there is still a common procedure where you have to go down to the court, you pay a fee or whatever you have to do, yeah? So I'm just generalising.
There are things to do before that, though, that are very important.
Okay.
Because the court is your very last resort. It must be. If you look at what's known as the civil procedures rules or the criminal procedures rules, they're online, CPR. If you Google it, it's free. The civil procedures rules say, and it makes sense, and this is one of the things I do advise people to do, is to check out what they should be doing before court. And civil procedures rules have got a thing called the pre-action protocols, which means things you do before you take court action. So you write to the person you've got the problem with. Now, if it's police, you write to the chief constable of that particular constabulary or I'm not sure what they call them in Ireland, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The chief constable is the defendant, not PC blogs, the chief constable, and that's called vicarious liability. And that means if I was to hire a hitman and that hitman went out and killed whoever it was I sent them out to kill them, I would be equally liable for that death by vicarious liability because I paid them to do it. I hired them, I paid them.
Yeah.
So the chief constable is vicariously liable for all his or her staff's action because he paid them to do it. So that's the defendant, is the chief constable, always, in every instance. Unless you're going to go down the road of, what is it Michael Doherty does now? Criminal private prosecutions, which I really don't know very much about. But so the chief constable is your defendant. So you have to write to them. And if you look up the Civil Procedures Rule, and I would strongly advise everybody to do this, the Civil Procedures Rules tells you what you need to do in the pre-action protocols, what you need to say. So you need to identify the parties. So that's me and you being the person you're writing to. So that's the chief constable.
Yeah.
So you're the claimant and they're the defendant.
Right.
You need to decide what court you're going to. Are you going to go to the magistrate's court? Are you going to take a criminal prosecution? Or are you going to go to county court and go for money? Well, if you're going to go for money, you need to decide, you need to show loss. County courts don't deal with guilty or not guilty. There's no guilty or not guilty in county court. It just doesn't work that way. County court is about going in and showing what's called quantum. If you came with your truck and accidentally knocked down my back garden wall, I could take that to county court because I could show them what it had cost me to fix it.
Yeah.
And you're responsible for that. Or I got some quotes, and because I can't afford to fix it, but I've got quotes, so that would be the amount of money I would be claiming off of you. And if I can present that a case that I can prove you did it and you are liable, then the judge will agree, and the cost of that money will come to me. That's all that happens in there. There's no guilty or not guilty. There's just money. So if you've been, assaulted by a policeman or knocked in the face or whatever, or unlawfully arrested, how can you put a cost on that? You really can't, can you?
No.
So what you do is you go for damages and you ask the court to award you X amount of damages. You say, I think I value my freedom or my peace of mind or my jawbone or whatever at this amount of money. And you hope that the judge will agree with you. They might not. They might award you more. They might award you less. But the thing is, what you do get, regardless of the money is, you do get a county court judgment. And no organisation wants a county court judgment against it because it shows up for anybody else, and it shows up for funding, and it shows up for credit references and all that. And police don't want to be seen with the county court record because, it shows they've broken the law, doesn't it?
And of course, that's why they kind of try and settle out of court in a lot of cases.
That's why you must do that too. That's what the pre-action protocols are. So you've identified the parties, you've identified the issues, you've told them what it is you want them to do to pay you or how you want them to put it right. You've given them the statutory 12 plus 2 days to respond. And there's another thing that you have to give them an option to deal with this out of court. I'm willing to negotiate. I'm willing to settle this out of court because, of course, you should only be going to court if you come to a stalemate where you can't agree.
Yeah.
Like with the truck and the wall, if you've agreed that you've done that and you're going to pay me, then there's no need to go to court, is there? Or maybe you're going to come round and fix it on the weekend and we don't need to have money change hands. So we can negotiate those things sometimes, and we should be. In the pre-action protocols, the Civil Procedures Rules requires you to show that you have done everything in your power to deal with this out of court. So do it right and write that letter and make sure that you put all the things that the Civil Procedures Rules requires you to do. Because what you're doing, you're writing that letter is becoming your evidence that you're going to give to the court should you need to go to the court. Because you can say to the judge, look, I did everything I could here. I did everything I could. But they didn't play ball. I gave them the opportunity to deal with this out of court. So the only reason we're in court is because they are not following the Civil Procedures Rules. So that already puts them on the back foot. They've already broken the law.
There's another thing called Memorandum of acceptance. And memorandum, and that's basically if you're, say, the other party's going to bring you to court. The whole idea with the memorandum of acceptance is you fill it out and you go to the court clerk and go, look, I've asked this party for this information and they're not giving it to me, so there's no point pursuing this in court unless the party give me the information I require. Have you heard about that?
Well, that might be an Irish term to it. It might be a Freeman term for it, but what we have in the UK is called a disclosure order, which I think is probably the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting. Yes, I cannot pursue this. I cannot put forward a proper defence until I've seen the information I want, etc. Neither party is obliged to provide any information to the other pre-court. You're not obliged to legally at all.
Right, okay.
Which comes as a bit of a shock to people when police say, well, you've been caught speeding or whatever, and you ask for the information and they won't give you it. They're not obliged to. Nobody is. It's private. Everybody's information is private.
Well, apparently
what they do is they make so many claims that so few people challenge it that they get away with it again. You know, you've been speeding. Oh, I better pay then. You've been parking in the wrong place. Oh, I better pay then.
Yeah.
So it's the few people that do challenge it, it sometimes goes through court, and the other ones, they just drop it anyway. But you do, if you show the court that you did everything in your power according to the civil procedures rules, pre-action protocols, if you've written that letter and you've given them the time to respond and they haven't responded, that letter's part of your claim when you do go to the court and you fill in it's called a Part 7 claim here. When you fill in the form, that becomes part of your evidence. Look, Your Honour, or whatever, I've done everything I can to keep this out of court. And of course there are cost issues too with court. If you lose, there are costs to be paid here. So you can say the cost issues, you know, there wouldn't be any cost issues if the other side had followed civil procedures rules like I did. We wouldn't be in court, so there wouldn't be any cost issues. So you can actually say, well, no, I'm not liable for those costs, even if you lose, because we wouldn't have been here had they played the game in the first place.
Yeah, and have you actually used that regarding the likes of, you know, parking fines and all that kind of stuff?
I've not had parking fines, but since doing the law degree and studying, I've helped and represented people in the Court of Appeal now. I've done 10 Court of Appeals with people, and I've won 10.
Wow, very good. Well done.
Yeah, it is. A lot of it is about following the rules and following the procedures, because once you do it, you can show you're whiter than white. The judge hasn't got an issue with you. And also, if you don't follow the civil procedures rules and you don't give them an opportunity to deal with this out of court, and you go straight into court, they can, and they have the right to do so, and I think it is fair that they have the right to do this. They can have your case struck out because you didn't follow the rules. So you won't even get to court because you didn't follow the civil procedures rules in the first place. And
does this civil procedure rule apply? We'll go to questions now in a minute, but does this civil procedure rule apply to everything? It's a process that everybody should follow. It's the procedures that the court expect people to do with everything, with all civil cases.
Yes, it's called the pre-action protocols, yeah. And there's also a thing that says, if you look at the very first part, what's it called? Oh, I've got brain fuzz, I can't think of the name of the word. But it's to do with the main underlying reason for all these rules. And the bottom line is to deal with things quickly and swiftly and fairly and appropriately. And of course, appropriately might be to deal with this out of court, because of course, you might agree with it. I might have 10 complaints to come to you, for example. You know, we've got issues and there are 10 issues I want to bring to court. Well, you might say, yeah, I agree with 8 of those. Well, we can deal with 8 of those out of court. But there are 2 things that we need to take to court. So that would make a court case a lot quicker and more efficient, rather than having to go there and going through the 10 things and finding out that already we're in agreement with 8 of them. So the court just expects you not to waste the court's time or each other's time, the other party's time. The only things you take to court are the things that you cannot manage to deal with out of court. And of course, if you show the court you have done that, then you can use that against the other party, because if they don't, you can have their case struck out too.
Right, okay. Now, we're going to go to questions, but Another thing comes to mind, as you say, about dealing with things. If you've written letters to a third party or a company, and you've requested information, and the company have ignored the letters, and then they bring you to court. What you're saying is them letters that you've asked them, because you're trying to speak to them directly and ask them for the information, and they're not giving it. Surely that has to stand to you in court as well.
Well, if that was admissible, that would go as part of your evidence, yes. When you put your case forward or your defence forward, you would say, refer you to Exhibit A, and Exhibit A is the letter where I asked for that information. Exhibit B is the letter where I asked for that information. But you do have to bear in mind that nobody is obliged to supply information out of court. But then you can use, if you read the civil procedures rules, they're numbered, 3.9 and 6.8b or whatever. You can say, and they didn't provide that information contrary to civil procedures rules, something. And if they hadn't done, we wouldn't be here wasting the court's time.
Yeah.
So there's a cost implication here. So if I lose, I don't want costs put upon me, because I wouldn't be here if they had followed the civil procedures rules.
Okay, that's interesting to know. Right, we're going to go off to the questions.
Makes sense, doesn't it? When you think about it, it makes sense.
Well, it does. Yeah, I mean, it's like anything. I suppose, harm, loss, or injury. If you look at common law, if there's an injured party, you go up and say, look, I'm sorry you did that. Here's if there's a loss or I damage your car, here's the money. You sort it out without going into court, which is the proper thing to do, and basically that's what you're applying there, the same thing. Right, we're going to go off to questions. Steve, we'll have a few questions there.
Yeah, Sarah, a couple of questions here. As we in Ireland here use the bar court system as in the UK, Chris was wondering, would UK law be the same as Irish, and would a test case in the UK set a precedent for a case in Ireland?
Oh, suck it and see.
Okay.
Try it and find out. I don't know. I would imagine, I know how it works here. I don't know if you get the same thing, but we get a free half-an-hour consultation with a lawyer in this country if you want one. If you've got that, go in and with a lawyer and ask them.
Okay, it's fair point.
Really?
No.
I don't know. It'd be interesting to know.
We do have free legal advice over here you can ring up. FLAC is Free Legal Advice Centre, and you can go and Google that, and you go to the website. It's an Irish website, and they offer free legal advice for what it's worth. So if there are people out there who have a legal question and you're not sure, you can ring up FLAC, and they will be able to help you. Hopefully they'll be able to help you, Steve. Sorry.
Are they any good, though?
Well, they're not going to tell you anything that will go against the system. So as long as you keep it, in line with the system, then they'll help you.
Yeah.
Ask very specific and short questions. Never ask a set question that lasts more than one sentence.
Right. Okay. What are you doing tonight? But that's not legal. Okay, Steve.
I don't know where you're going. Sarah, Agent, one of the long-time listeners of the show, he just put in a couple of comments there, and we've heard this time and time again. I'll be just interested to hear what your thoughts are on what he says. He says, if you're using a legal name, you have no rights. And if you give a name, you give consent, because they, obviously the police, assume and presume you have given a legal name. And a court summons is addressed to a legal name. If you attend the court, you are claiming to be the legal name.
Right. I've heard that before loads and loads of times.
Is that something that you would agree with, or disagree, or?
It doesn't matter whether I agree with it or not. If he can go in court and prove it, he's got a case. If he can't prove it, don't bother.
Okay, that's not something you've ever used, no?
No, it's a nonsense. I can't prove that. These are all assumptions. These are assumptions based on observations. It may be right, it may not be right, but I've yet to see any evidence either way. So a court case is about using what I've learned is a legal argument, and it's not that different to what the free men say, you don't owe me and it's the name and all this stuff. But what you do in there is that you don't make any accusations. You always say it appears. It would appear that they have broken the law. It would appear that they did so and so, because it's for the judge to decide whether it is legit or not you. So you present your case without making any firm facts unless you can prove them. And if you can prove them, then fair enough. So if you've got this thing about the legal name and you saying it ties you into something, if you can prove it, then do that. Take that information, take that irrefutable evidence, have that evidence put into the court and craft your argument around it. If it's just something you're saying, you're just talking because you've heard it off the internet or John Harris or whoever where I started, then it's just going to be a waste of your time, the court's time and everybody else, because the court is there to act upon evidence. Now they will do this, they will try to blind you with science and talk about all sorts of stuff. But you can stand up and you can say, objection, I've seen no evidence for this. I want that struck off the record. And it must be done in accordance with the rules of evidence. So you have to play fair. If you want them to play right and you want them to prove their case, you have to prove yours too, or you have no right to say it, in my opinion.
Sorry, I'm just going to say, sorry, Steve, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's pretty much what he's saying. I mean, if it's all about rights. Once you go into their ball game or the room where they make the rules.
No, this is what I'm saying. Can you prove that? Can you prove any of that is true, or is it not just so much internet talk?
Well, if you go into a room and a man wearing a wig makes a judgment against you and you get carted off and you end up in a cell, then that kind of, would that not be proof that they make the rules, they control the game?
Yes.
Right, so then it doesn't just appear as if it's kind of a fact then.
Yes, that is the case, but you're saying about the legal name and all that. That was what I was discussing. I was talking about this legal name, and if you allow them to use the legal name, you're agreeing with them and contracting and all that. It really doesn't work like that in practice. In practice, what happens is they mean you, they mean me, and I don't know how else they would address you, to be honest.
I might be able to.
I do know what they mean, and it is true. It is correct. We know it's correct. But it's a pointless exercise to keep talking about it and saying about it unless you can prove that the legal name isn't you and whatever. Because when people go up and say, oh, I'm not the name, they will continue in absentia because that's what they do, because you've effectively said you're not there and you've been summoned to go there. So the best thing you can do, in my view, is to find out how to argue your case effectively.
Yeah, there is. We do have a notary republic over here in Ireland, and I have a document which I downloaded off their website, which does say they talk about the human being and the artificial in the body corporate. So now I'm not saying we could use that as an argument, but it's funny that that's in the notary republic where it does say that there's two people in one person. You know,
it's confusing, isn't it? It's when you get councils saying, think of us as your corporate parent. Well, I'd rather think of Jimmy Savile as my parent than that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Right, Steve, you got more questions there for Sarah?
Yes, indeed I do. Shane says, does Sarah think the Nice Treaty will change the rights that we have? This was mentioned actually on OYM a couple of weeks ago, where Alan mentioned that the British Queen will soon be signing, well, in November, she's going to be signing the Nice Treaty.
Yeah. I've done a whole show about that, actually, if you want to go and look at my Mixcloud on that. Yes, very much so. How? We don't quite know how it's going to affect things. There have been talks about the presumption of innocence will go. There have been talks about all sorts of things. I'm still, the jury's out with me on what will change, but the voting system itself for Europe means that the European countries will now be voting on what affects us rather than us. It takes away the UK's Parliament's sovereignty. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, because either way, we don't have any say in it, do we? The people.
It'll be a bad thing because their sovereignty's been taken away and they're screwing us to the wall. So,
well, financially, they most certainly are.
Yeah, it's going to be bad for the UK. If the EU come in, I mean, I know what the UK government is like, but at least you still have some kind of control. But once the EU come in, that's it, you know. The job's done. Steve. Okay. Right, okay, let's crack on. Okay, now, so what you're saying is, I mean, I understand where you come from regarding the argument. What you said kind of ties into what Bill Thornton said in his videos. He said, you have to go in, you have to be respectful, and one of the videos that Bill said, which I thought was very interesting, he was saying, your case, all your paperwork and your arguments should be in the paperwork before you actually go into court. Because you don't want to, he said, you don't want to get into an argument with the judge. All Bill has to say is that, if the judge says something that you don't like, you object to it, you say, I object. And he says, because it's kind of the sovereign and the king, Bill says that if the judge does turn around and say to you, if you keep objecting, and if he says overruled, you say, well, for the record, Judge, that's my wish, And if he says, what is your wish? Then I suppose you could say, I would like this case struck off. Or is there a better way to say that?
Yeah, there's a better way of saying that. You don't object to the judge, you object to the counsel or the other party standing up saying things. So they may be cross-examining someone and you object to the way they're doing it because they might be leading them. Or they'll stand up and say, well, he was caught speeding. Is it objection? There's been no evidence to prove this yet. I've asked photographic evidence or whatever. So I've been given no evidence that I was speeding. So I object to that statement that he was speeding. That hasn't been decided yet. That's for the judge to decide later. So you object, and then you ask the judge to strike that from the record. If you don't ask them to do it, they won't necessarily do that. So eventually you get to the point when he makes his decision that you've objected to all their nonsense, so they haven't got any in front of the judge. So when he's making his determination at the end, he can only decide on your stuff because that's all that's left.
Right, and of course.
But if you object on something like your question, you're saying, if you object and the judge doesn't uphold it, you can actually then say, well, I would just like to say that I would have said so-and-so. If you ask for something to be put into evidence and they refuse it, you can say, well, I just want to say on the record, I would have put so-and-so forward. Because once that's on the record, you can use that as an appeal later. You can say, well, I was denied due process. Yeah,
and also Bill said sometimes things don't get put on the record, so it's good having somebody, you can make your own notes, or somebody in there too. He said he uses two other people in the public gallery who obviously takes notes as well, so they have a record.
That's why you do your case beforehand, because really, again, that's another chance not to go to court. If you've got a good case and you've put all your evidence, and don't forget, don't say anything, don't make any statement you cannot prove.
Yeah.
So if you're going to say, and every statement, again, I always number everything. So statement 1 is a sentence, one sentence long. Sentence 2 is numbered, and that's one sentence long, and they're in order, and they're a logical progression. This happened. This was their responsibility. They broke their responsibility. Therefore, they did this wrong. Therefore, I want this remedy. So you put everything in small sentences so you can refer back to them. And then they might agree to 19 of them and not number 20, so that's the one that you need to address. But also it just makes the process go a lot more easily in court, because you say, here's sentence number 1, statement number 1 that I'm saying, and then you just say, refer to exhibit 1. And then here's another sentence, refer to exhibit 2. So what you're doing, everything that you're putting into that case, you are substantiating it with hard evidence. And if you can't do that, don't bother to say it.
Okay, let's break this down a little bit, and let's take something very basic. Say a speeding fine, for example, right? And so what would happen is, you get stopped, they have their Tonka toy, crouching guard, hidden tiger and all that, and they jump out on you and they say with their speed gun, which probably hasn't been calibrated for 10 years, and they say, you've been speeding. So you give them your details, and lo and behold, what comes in the post is an alleged offence saying that if you pay this money like a mafia protection racket, we won't pursue it any further. So what you're saying is you then write a letter to, as part of this procedure system, you then write a letter to who's ever in charge of that district. You have to find out who they are.
To do what? What are you writing a letter to? What for?
Well, I mean, what would you? Well, you tell me. You tell me what. No point me saying it. You tell me.
Well, I'm not sure what the question.
Well, what you want?
You haven't been taken to court yet, presumably.
No, the fine has come in, and you're saying, well, you know, at the end of the day, where's the evidence to say I was speeding?
Okay, well that evidence will be disclosed or ordered if you order it in court. But you can write to them and you can ask them, and they might give you it. If they've got photographic evidence, they might give you it. If you've asked for a calibration certificate for the machine, which you should ask for always, because it has to be calibrated within the last 12 months, I think.
Okay.
You always ask for that. They may well not do it. I've never known anybody be given that out of court. So when you get into court, when the court papers come, because you don't pay the fine and, you know, you get your date to go to court, then they say, well, they want you to put in your defence papers. So in your defence papers, say, well, you have asked for the calibration certificate, and if they insist on taking this to court, that you want to make the court aware that you will ask the court to order disclosure of that. So the other side then knows you mean business, and the court can order them to disclose that evidence, because you need that to know. And this is the magic phrase. Even if you're not going to use it, this is the magic phrase. Keep this in your brain at all times. Why do you want this information? You want this, and here's the phrase, so you know whether you need to take legal advice. Now, you don't necessarily want legal advice. You don't necessarily want to take legal advice. But if you tell them you need that information because you need to know if you want legal advice, they cannot deny you access to legal advice. So they have to order the disclosure.
Right. So what you're saying is the fine comes out. Now, again, what some people would do is obviously ignore the fine. Then a summons is then issued, because obviously that's your invitation to go to court. Now, a summons.
It's really not an invitation. That's a free man thing. You go and you fight your case, or you don't go and you're found guilty.
Right, okay. So what do you think of the return to sender approach, where you put a sticker on it and then stick it in the post box and send it back to them? Because
I've seen this in action in court. It's incredibly embarrassing, because it makes you look like an idiot.
Well,
and you will get done for it just the same, because they get that and they use that against you in court. He sent these things back he hasn't responded within the time. We can prove he hasn't responded within the time because he wrote this on the letter and sent it back.
But isn't there something in law that you have to get, so that's an offer of contract and you have 72 hours to get it back in the post?
We're back to proof again. Can you prove it's a contract? Can you prove law is contractual? I am ever so sorry to say this, and I hate saying this, and I know how this comes across at first glance, but it starts making people think properly about these things. It makes people start realizing what they're up against. Legislation is not contractual. It is forced upon you. It is force, but it is forced upon you.
It's a unilateral contract, yeah?
It's nothing you can write and say or negotiate that would change that. They write the law that well, what they're saying, it's the mob. The mob says, if you don't drive your car at 30 miles an hour, we'll have you and we'll steal money from you. And if you don't give us money, we'll lock you up. And that is what will happen. Right.
So you're saying the legislation is a unilateral contract, and that means it's one-sided, and that's just the way it is.
No, I'm not saying it's not a contract. I'm saying it is they are writing it down, telling you what they will do to you if you don't follow those rules.
Right. Okay.
And they do. So the best way to do it is use the rules back at them and show that, well, they didn't follow the rules. And if they didn't follow the rules, you can have the whole thing voided and got rid of. But the way I'm doing it in court now is to use the rules to the fullest extent, to use the rule of law, to use the rules of evidence against them. They're making accusations, they're making allegations. My thing is about policing by consent. They've acknowledged that we are policed by consent. Everybody acknowledges that. Theresa May acknowledges it. The Home Office acknowledges it. But what they say is that the individual cannot remove their rights, their consent rather. And I'm saying, prove it. It's an allegation, It's an opinion, but an opinion in law is not evidence.
Fair enough.
So on the 10th of October, that goes to the Court of Appeal now. I'm in Exeter Appeal Court using just that. That's what we've called Lioness Law. It's just the foundation evidence of this claim. Before you start talking about whether I've done speeding or whatever, we have to say that, the police were aware I don't consent to be policed, and we are policed by consent. Therefore, this should not have happened, because this has only happened because I have been policed, contrary to my expressed wishes.
Right, but where did you tell the police that you don't want to consent with them?
Well, that's the thing I do online. It's called Lioness Law. You can actually sign up for it. People can, and I send off a legal argument to the chief of police and let them know that these people who've got these little Lioness Law cards, if one of their thugs, constables, whatever you want to call them, guards, comes up against you and wants to inflict legislation upon you. Not law, if you harm somebody, fair enough, they need justice, don't they?
That's understandable.
You don't need police for justice. You don't need police for justice. So you don't need to be policed as such. And if they come up and they do that, and we've got one of these little Lioness Law cards and we show them that, then the chief constable has been made aware that this is someone who doesn't consent to be policed.
Right.
So then if they continue to do that, then of course you have got every reason to take that into court and just say, well, hang on, this should not have happened. But it hasn't been tested in court yet. When it's tested in court, it becomes case law. And when it's case law, that type of court and all the lower courts below it have to follow that. And that's what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to make case law so that you can use that as a precedent and quote that case.
Well, that's if it obviously applies before the signing of the Nice Treaty, and then that could kind of put a kibosh in everything. We have a few questions coming in, Sarah.
I don't know. Will it change the fact if we're policed by consent? I don't know.
America
isn't.
Well, see,
America's not policed by consent.
Well, the whole idea, my understanding of the signing of the Nice Treaty is that we're going to go into, it's going to change into Napoleonic law, which means that everything that's, the law that we have now, common law, is that everything's legal unless it's deemed illegal. And if you switch that around, then it's everything's illegal unless it's deemed legal. And this is what we're going to be going into, apparently.
Well, yes. Yeah, but it still seems a grey area. When we've looked at it, it's been very hard to find that evidence and to find, that there's all this flying around, but actually putting it together and saying, yes, this is this and this does mean that and this is the proof of that. I don't know enough about it. I've done a whole show on it. In fact, we've done 2 shows on it, radio shows now, and I'm with experts, and I've had a criminal law specialist and all sorts in. And we still haven't managed to get to the bottom of it. I've had an MP I have interviewed for 2 hours, and he's all so pro-Europe, it's frightening.
That's
It's willful blindness.
That is, definitely, yeah. Well, with nothing different over here. Steve, you've got a couple of questions for Sarah.
Yeah, we've got a few questions, more questions, Sarah. This one, I have 2 questions actually from Karen. And Karen, thanks for the questions. The first question is, would it be possible to have a lawsuit on behalf of the people against the banks for turning us into accomplices to murder through our taxes and governments who lie in order to send us to war?
That's a heck of a sentence, isn't it?
Yep.
I don't think I don't know. God knows. It's too big a question to answer. You'd have to take it all apart and look at every little bit of it.
I think the proof is
the government.
Yeah, I think the proof with that question, I think they'd have to have the proof. That's it.
Yeah, well, question 2 is HSBC and other banks have been caught money laundering. Would it be possible to sue and not pay credit card bills, etc.?
Yes, but you are not the person to sue because you are not the victim. They haven't laundered your money, have they, and caused you any loss. So it would be for the government to sue them.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Another question, this is a comment actually. I am awake said, you can't win if you get a fixed penalty speeding ticket. They will be right and you will be wrong. They don't even have to prove that you received the fine through the post. You are guilty unless you can prove your innocence. It stinks, but that's just how it is.
And I agree 100%.
Okay.
It sucks. It sucks. These bulk clearing houses and all, they don't even give you the right of appeal. Yeah. We're working on it. We're all working on it. Lots of people are working on it. Yeah, it sucks. It's criminal. It's criminal every which way you look at it.
Well, the whole thing is criminal. We know it's criminal, Well, Steve?
Yeah, hopefully now, if you have success with that, it'll filter over here as well.
No. When?
When? Sorry.
Not if. When?
Yes. Sorry, I was. I don't know what came over me there. Yes, when you have
10
success.
a.m.
Sorry.
That's what we're gonna, 10th of October at 10 a.m.
Well, good luck with that one anyway. You keep us posted on that. Anyway, I think we're going to be doing the part 2 show, Sarah, because this is a fantastic subject to talk about and we just need more time. But Steve has more questions for us there.
Yeah, and we have this, Sarah, before I can continue with the next question, we have this kind of fictitious thing that goes on. It's been going on a long time. We have this fictitious pub crawl that we have, and depending on the guest and the information, the listeners decide on whether you're going to the pub crawl or not.
Oh, I hope so.
I just want to tell you, you've been elected. You're going to the pub crawl.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. Next question from Shane. Shane is saying, please ask Sarah if her video, I'm guessing this is the one that, I think it was an audio, the one that you used in the car that evening when you were dragged from the car, is that admissible in court?
Yes, it's admissible in court. It's not available for anybody to hear yet because it hasn't been to court yet because I've been waiting for the IPCC investigation, but that is now unstayed. So within the next 6 months, hopefully that will be in court. So at the moment, it's part of the court evidence. You should never put court evidence out in the public domain until the case has been heard. So yes, but yes, it can be heard. Of course, it's my proof. They say one thing and I can prove another.
Excellent, that's good stuff. And the one has just come in now. I haven't even had a chance to read it. I'm just going to read it now live. This come in from Willie. Willie is wondering, in Latin, legal, leg equals law, and al equals elsewhere. So legal is law elsewhere, and if the law is elsewhere, are we under it? Strange question.
I know what he means, yeah. I've got a friend, Max, who I always call Mr. Dictionary Corner. He likes to do this with words as well. The only thing I can ever answer with that is it's mob rule. The mob says we're going to do this and you're going to pay us or else.
So basically we just need a bigger mob.
Who cares, really? We are a bigger mob.
We are.
We just don't realise it.
But we just let them do it and get away with it until they believe they can.
We need to educate, more and more people need to be educated on the law and then use their system against themselves in a proper way.
It's the system. It's not necessarily their system, it's the system.
Right.
So if we use it well and we use it better than them, then you wouldn't call it their system. It's like a game of chess, I see it. Yeah. You're just going to play it better. The
trouble is that they have had years of experience using it. That's the problem. And we've had Ben Gilroy on the show. Ben is a regular in the High Court, and the games that they play with him in the High Court are switching from common law to legislation and back again. And just, it's unbelievable. And you think, this shouldn't be going on. Where's the justice in the court, you know?
Oh, God, yeah. I think the word justice is a dirty word in court.
Yeah, I mean, you'd expect, at least the judges to try and behave themselves. But then again, they're not elected, they're selected. So it's
also your job to make sure that they do. And I hear things and I see these videos sometimes that you see videos that people have filmed in court and they're demanding this of the judge and are you on your oath and did you do this and do you that? And I thought, oh God, are you mad? The judge is not on trial today. So the judge is not obliged to answer your questions. Get that right. They're not on trial. So you are. Okay. You're there to say, did you do this or did you not do that? And that's all they want to know about.
Okay.
So, and also, it's crazy because you want that judge on your side, don't you?
Oh, of course. And what about just...
Don't antagonise them and be rude to them and aggressive and demanding and talk about all this other irrelevant nonsense.
Yeah, Bill...
Keep short and simple and be respectful and keep them in their place. And if they step out of line, you tell them why, and it's contrary to X, Y, or Z part of the procedures or the rules or the legislation that governs them.
That's right. I mean, Bill Thornton said the same thing. You go in with a certain decorum and, because you don't want to go and upset the judge, you want him on your side.
I have a laugh. A low-cut dress and a good smile. It always works.
Yeah, I bet it does. Now, what about the whole idea of asking the judge whether it's civil or criminal?
Whether what, civil or criminal?
If you go into court, right, and you go up and you're being accused of something or other, and you ask the judge, is this civil or criminal? Because obviously, if it's criminal, there must be an injured party. If it's civil, there must be a contract. I mean, what's your take on that?
No, you're going back round full circle to assuming that legislation is contractual. It's criminal because they say it is. And they say, if you don't do this, we will do that to you. And if you don't do this, they will do that to you.
Right, okay.
It's civil if it's in a civil court. It's if it's in a county court. If it's in a magistrate's court, they call it criminal.
So depending on the court you're in for that, because they will, if they send you a summons to go to court, then they'll have selected the court for that case, and what you need to work out.
If it's legislative, it will always be magistrate's court. It will always be county. If you've got the option of guilty or not guilty, it has to be called a criminal matter, and it starts in magistrates. The county courts are where you have quantum to repay monetary loss, and there's no guilty or not guilty.
We have different courts over here, so that's what I'm trying to. You have the district court, we have the High Court, and we have the Supreme Court. Is there another court in between that? I don't know.
Tennis court.
Somebody in the chat room might give me the courts, but I know we have a district court, and we have
a magistrate's court.
I'm not too sure which one would be classed as the magistrate.
Well, it'd be the lowest first port of call. You've been done for speeding, and they summoned you to court, and you would go to
the district court. Yeah, that would be.
Oh, well, that would be the equivalent of the magistrates here. It's the lowest one.
Yeah, the local court would be the district court. My understanding is anyway, and that's where you've been speeding and you've been done, and the whole room is full of people, and you get called up one after the other like a cattle market, and
the production line, isn't it?
And then you say...
And you get people going outside and they're saying, yes, I'm really pleased. I only got fined 80 quid and I thought I was going to have to pay 100. And I'm thinking, what?
Yeah, and then...
They're thrilled. They think they've got away with something.
Yeah, and then obviously the other side of they say, yes, Judge, I did do that and that did happen, but I'll tell you what, I'll donate £200 to the Gardaí Benevolent Fund. And then the judge goes, okay, that's fine, thank you very much, That's his pension covered. A part of it anyway, but I've seen that. I've sat in the local court, but we have the district court, circuit court, Supreme High Court. Do we have circuit court, district court, circuit court, High Court, and Supreme Court? They're the four courts I believe we have, and obviously when you get a summons, it'll probably be the district court. Do you have any more questions there, Steve?
Yes, I have one from Snowy. I know if I don't ask it, I'll be in trouble. But just want to read out one thing here that agent put in. I thought it was kind of interesting. He talked about the word side, C-I-D-E. He said side means to kill, as in homicide, genocide, suicide. And then he says a judge presides over a case. I just thought that was worth reading out. But when you mentioned earlier, Sarah, about people going in and asking the judge, is the judge on his oath, and you were saying that that's kind of going towards the free man stuff again. I think it was kind of that maybe when someone goes in and it's all about proof and what can be proven, sometimes maybe we don't know if the judge is going to be fair and impartial. And if someone is asking the judge, are you on your oath, then maybe it's just, would that not be kind of a good thing to do? Just if the judge says yes I am, then maybe you have a little bit of proof that he is going to be fair and impartial.
Well, he's never going to say no, is he? So it's a pointless exercise. He's not going to say, well, no, actually, I'm not. I'm here to shaft you today. I'm not going to say that. So it's a rhetorical question. If he doesn't answer it, people say, oh, there you are, that's proof he wasn't, which is no proof at all, he just didn't answer. Yeah. And C, he's not on trial, so he's not obliged to answer you anything, and you're just going to piss him off.
Oh, no, but, I know he's not on trial, but the fact that he's going to be presiding over the trial, over your trial, then maybe...
Do you know what's the best thing that can happen to you in a court case?
Drop dead?
That the judge... that the judge does something wrong, that they screw you up, that they deny you your rights, that they direct a jury, if there's a jury, and they direct the jury to do it. If the judge does something that you can prove according to their rules, the civil procedures rules or criminal procedures rules or whatever you've got, if you can prove they do it, then you can void that order. It's called a void order. There's loads of it on my website about that and how to do it. Basically, it didn't happen. That case didn't happen. You can get rid of all of it. If the judge did something that was illegal or unlawful or broke the rules, you can just have the whole thing struck out anyway. It's a gift. It's an absolute gift.
Well,
so yeah, lead them up the path and let them do something wrong, because that's what you need. That's your get out of jail free card.
Take a note of that. Now, Bill, I've been watching Bill Thornton during the week, and Bill is obviously you know him, Sarah, and he, as I said before the show, we were talking about this, and Bill's approach is to make sure you're the plaintiff, not the defendant, because then if you're the plaintiff, then it's your court, because he said chances are if you're the defendant, then you won't win in the court. But he said, being a plaintiff, how you can do is switch it, and I think Carol Lentz does say the same thing, that you actually counterclaim against whoever's claiming against you, bringing it to court, and you just say, well, listen, I've asked you X, Y, and Z. I've asked for your, again, it could be about jurisdiction, and you say, you're exceeding your jurisdiction, and can you show me that you have jurisdiction over me? And if you can, then okay, fair enough. I'm happy to settle whatever. But until you can actually show me some jurisdiction over me, then I'm not going to go anywhere with this. And
I'm not sure I'd call that a counterclaim. That is part of a defence, where you can just say that I've seen no evidence. No evidence has been presented that they have got this authority to do so, and you would ask the court to order such evidence. And of course, it can't be forthcoming because it doesn't exist.
Well,
I've not heard of this counterclaim, but of course, one good way of going in, I agree with what he says, that it's best to be on the leading side rather than the defending side. Is it doesn't matter. Did you say circuit court is the first one? You've got your lowest court. Is that what you called it?
District court, I think.
District court, yeah. And what we have as magistrates court is. It doesn't matter what happens in those courts, to be honest. It really doesn't matter, because you can always appeal, and so you go to appeal, and once you're appealing, I was explaining this today at dinner with somebody, once you're the appellant, once you are the claimant, you are appealing against the judgment, the other side has to present their case. They have to effectively defend your appeal. So you're in the driving seat, and when you're the appellant, you're appealing the case. So you go in and you can appeal in the UK anyway. There are 3 ways to appeal. You can appeal the judgment, you can appeal the sentence, or you can appeal the judgment and the sentence. So what you do is you go in and you say, this is the reason I'm appealing, and this is my evidence, and the court's got my evidence. You give your case, and then the other side has to defend that. So if you're saying, for example, you're appealing because no evidence was put forward that they had the authority to do this, if they can't put that evidence in, because that's the reason you're appealing, so is that specific evidence that's required. If they can't put that in, then the judge will have to find, and your appeal will have to be upheld. And if your appeal is upheld, you win.
And, again, Bill Thornton actually says that wherever the order the judge makes, he says he just goes outside and changes, resets the order, or, writes off, reverses what the judge said by doing his own order.
How?
I don't know. You need to watch the video and talk to Bill Thornton.
It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Right? Maybe it's American law. I don't know, but that's what he talks about anyway. I over here in Ireland, for people who are living in Ireland, the counterclaim is called a notice of dispute, and basically all you're doing is disputing what they're saying or what they want, and you actually. I think what you have to do is, again, Bill said, and I think, Sarah, you agreed with Bill, do your argument, on the paperwork. And if you're going into court, the less you say, the better. Don't argue with the judge. Be nice. And, if there's anything that you're,
You can argue with the judge, but you can do it politely. There's no need to be rude to these people because, you want the judge on your side to a certain extent, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
And it makes it rotten for everybody. It makes it rotten for you. You come out with a headache and a bad feeling and you don't want to go again. If you do it right, it can be fun because it is a game. I see it now. Absolutely. It's different when it's your own case. It is different when, your home rests upon it or your freedom. It's a different matter. But it's about playing the game better than the other side. So if they say something and you object, you can stand up and you can, if you've done it 3 times, you can stand up and say, you know what I'm going to say, Your Honour, don't you? And you can have a laugh about it. And I'll say, I remember somebody said something, I was representing something, and I said, my client something, and I just said, oh, listen to me, my client. I sound like Perry Mason. And the judge thought it was hilarious and had a really good laugh. But, they're just people. They're just there to do it.
Do the job.
And I think, and this is one thing that it said in our training materials when we started doing the law degree. Quite often the person who wins in court is not the one who's got the best evidence or the best information or is the best law student or the best barrister. It's the one who engages the judge that they just want to listen to you more because they'll listen and take in what you say more if they like you.
Okay, well that's good to know. And
nothing to do with justice there at all.
Yeah.
But that's what they say.
Well, see,
and they are humans.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I see this as a chess game, and I know people say. I know Karen made a comment here that how can you win using the rules and obeying their system? Well, it's not. It's our system as well.
It's not their system. It's the system.
It's the system. It's our system.
It's your system too.
We have to learn how to play the game, and for years.
Exactly. But people expect to go in and say a few things and come out and win, and very occasionally they do, but generally they don't. And I say, you wouldn't start taking the top off your head because you had a headache and poking about in the brain and starting, oh God, it's bleeding now, what do I do? Because I've seen a YouTube video and someone on the internet said this is what you do. You will go to a brain surgeon who's trained for years and years and years and let them do it for you. And that's why they do have barristers and that's why they have lawyers, because they are trained and they know that game, and it is a game. And yes, it's been corrupted, and it's mainly been corrupted by those same barristers and lawyers. But you can't expect to go in and play a game with a highly trained, highly experienced professional armed with a template that you've got off the internet and expect to win.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it is not sensible, is it? Or logical.
I think it's
expect that.
I think it's down to evidence as well. I mean, at the end of the day,
it's all about evidence.
It's all about evidence. Right, we have we're near the time now to finish up. So we have a couple of questions from Steve. And
one final question. Okay. One final question from Snowy. If I don't ask this, I'll be in trouble. Snowy is wondering, Sarah, how do we win and beat the bankers? It's getting late.
God knows. Let me know when you've worked it out.
Okay. Well, God knows. God knows. I'll ask him this evening when I'm talking to him. I'm having a point with God after the show.
Thank you.
Well, it's good to know that what you're doing and you're taking on the system. And what advice would you give people where you're at? Obviously you've done your law degree. The people aren't going to be doing that. But what advice would you give people about taking on the system? What do they need to do?
Never make a statement you can't prove. Never let anyone else make a statement they can't prove. Never allow that to become evidence. Object to it and have it struck off. Make sure you understand the rules. Learn the civil procedures rules. Make it your bedtime reading. Read it and read it and read it and read it and understand it. It's not that complicated once you get it into your head that it's there to make the court run in a particular way. So if you know how the court should be running and you're doing it right, you also know how it should be running when they do it wrong. And you can call them on it and you can have any order, any decision they make voided when they step out of line.
Would you
use it, know what the rules of evidence are. If they try to put something in, you object. It's contrary to the rule of evidence.
Would you say, if you were to put yourself in the position as the judge, wherever, if that's possible at all.
Always do that.
And it's your court. How would you like people to act in your court?
Respectfully.
Exactly. So that's
clearly, simply, quickly, and let me go for my lunch.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the way you're going to have to think about it. And obviously, maybe go to the local district court and observe court etiquette for the. Maybe learn that, because I do believe that the return to sender has worked for people. We can't deny that it has worked. But we had Tammy Pepperman on our show there last year, and Tammy's method is more to go for the jugular. In other words, so you think, you're accusing me of this, and you think, this is what I've done. Well, okay, let's go and go after this. Let's go and deal with this once and for all. And through their system, use their system against themselves. So that's kind of, Tammy's approach. But Sarah, we've got to that time, and it's been a brilliant chat. I think we're going to have to do a part 2 because this is a massive subject, and it's great talking. I personally enjoy talking law and learning about law and learning about the system. Whether myself and Steve are doing our own things in our own way, and we have certain things to contend with, and letters coming in the post, which we're dealing with. But I do like learning all different kind of ways and methods and people talk about, and then you take what you need from it, which is really great. So I really appreciate you coming on. I definitely think we'll have to do a part 2. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to obviously Steve will have his bit to say, and we'll get all your details off you as well.
Okay, I'll just say too, if anybody wants to, every Monday I do a live radio show on FM radio. It's actually, you can get it on the internet too, on Riviera FM, riviera.fm, Monday 3 to 5. And we have a subject every week and guests and all sorts.
Okay, Riviera FM.
Riviera.fm, yep.
Riviera.fm. I'm going to type that into the chat box as well for people.
It's mainstream radio and there's all sorts of other presenters, but I do my thing on a Monday. They're very brave to let me have a show, but there we are. We've tackled all sorts of subjects.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure everyone will do their best to tune in and hear you do your thing on Mondays.
Tomorrow at 3.
Yeah, excellent. Sarah, for anyone who's listening who wants to find out more of what you're doing, do you have a website or YouTube channel that you can give us?
All the podcasts of my shows are on Lioness Raw, that's RAW, that sort of Raw, and they're on Mixcloud and on YouTube, and my Lioness Law website is just thelioness.co.uk, and that's a terrible website. I'm going to be updating it, but it's all the information is still there.
Right, so you have Lioness Raw, R-A-W.
Raw.
No, Raw.
Yeah, Raw, yeah, R-A-W.
R-A-W.
Oh, Raw,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Raw.
That's my YouTube.
Raw, not Raw. Okay.
No, like Eddie
That's
Murphy,
my
remember?
YouTube and on Mixcloud, and that Mixcloud is the most recent one that I'm using. That's got all the shows that we've done and stuff like that. If you go to Mixcloud and look for Lioness Raw, you'll get all the stuff that's up there. And there's a few videos on the YouTube, but they're just the early shows, really. They're not all there. I don't use that much anymore.
Excellent. Okay, we'll pop
the
it in the chat box.
Law stuff about police, with the cards and everything about the police by consent thing, that's thelioness.co.uk. I'm sorry if you can hear a weird noise. It's my puppy playing with a teething ring, throwing it around the room.
Your puppet? Puppy. That's weird. My puppet is
throwing it at me, hoping that I'll play.
Well, you need to go and play with the dog. Sarah, I want to say thanks for all the information. It's been great. And okay, so some of it was kind of a little bit saddening to me, especially when you're talking about the return to sender and that kind of stuff, because that is what we're kind of hearing on the net at the moment. And you're right, there is a lot of stuff going around. We're not hearing a lot of people having great success with it, but we're not hearing people not having success. So it's kind of it's just what we're going through at the moment.
Well, I've done 10 and I've won 10.
Okay, can you clone yourself maybe? Because we could do with some of you.
Someone else would do the hoovering.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll contact Kerry Cassidy. She knows people who can do the sort out the cloning, so we can do that.
And Alan's great at hoovering. I just want to point that out.
And my earnings pretty good as well. Yeah. All right, Sarah, stay with us there for a minute, and we're just going to go off to a musical break, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Yes, it is, and here we are. And if an alien wants to probe your butt or read your mind, the tinfoil hat is the only way to go. A bit of Weird Al Yankovic. I know some people don't like him. I happen to like him, so there you go. That's actually from my record collection. Yeah, no, Alan wanted me to play a bit of Val Doonigan this evening, but I said, no, won't do it.
I was going to pull out my rocking chair and everything.
Yeah, okay.
And my woolly jumper.
The less said about that, the better. And your Aaron jumper and your cardigan now.
That's it. Brilliant information from Sarah. I do enjoy talking about law and looking at all the different things that, there's so much to cover. It's a massive subject, as you all know. But it's nice kind of getting different opinions from different people. I have been kind of looking at the Bill Thornton videos this week and getting his take on a few things, and I have to do a bit more studying on it. It's nice to know about that civil procedure that you have to kind of go through, because at the end of the day, if you were to pretend to be the judge if you can, in that capacity. And then think about, you got somebody coming in asking you why you on your oath and stuff like that. You would think, because judges being in that position and doing all that training, you think, they'd have a level of arrogance, I'd say, from them. And they'd say, who's this bloody upstart asking me all these things, am I on my oath? So I suppose if you kind of switch the table and you approach it from that way, then you can say, okay, let's play their game, but play it in a way that, you have a chance of winning, whatever the case may be. We know that, Ben does that, and a lot of people do that, and even the odds are a lot of the time stacked against you because they don't play the ball. They don't play the game properly. You want a game of chess, and they're playing chess and tiddlywinks and everything else with the pieces, but they won't let you do that. So, the system's stacked against you to a certain extent, but as Sarah said, she had 10 cases and she won 10 cases, 10 out of 10. That's good. That must mean she's doing something right. So we just have to, as Steve said, we have to clone Sarah, clone Ben, clone all these people who know the system, and have them all around the country, and educate people and give them the power, empower them to be able to do it. And that's what we're trying to do. I'm trying to learn as much as I can. I'm sure Steve's the same.
I'm trying to learn as much as you're learning, yeah. And it ain't working.
Yeah, we're getting there. It just takes time, really.
Are we getting there? I wonder.
Now, next week, we have the plan of attack is we have a chap called Ralph Ring on, who's a scientist. And he's in his 80s. He was building, believe it or not, flying crafts. The only way to call it is UFOs, but basically he was building them in the 50s. And he was, now everybody knows Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla lived in a New York hotel, and he died in 1943, or there was arguments whether he died or, they did him in. But as soon as he passed away, they took all his patents from him. But Nikola Tesla got friendly with a chap in the hotel called Otis T. Carr. And they used to sit for hours and talk about the whole, all that technology and knowledge and everything else. And Nikola Tesla said apparently the quote is that, Nikola Tesla said to Otis T. Carr, the people aren't ready for this technology. Maybe in your generation they will be. So Otis T. Carr was a protege of Nikola Tesla. And Ralph Ring was actually, did some work with Otis T. Carr in his younger days before he died. So this Ralph Ring is on such a level as a scientist, what he's developed and what he's done, and they were shut down and the equipment was taken away from him. And you should just Google, if you want to kind of get an idea who Ralph Ring is, go to YouTube and type in Ralph Ring, and you'll see interviews that he done and the level of technology he developed and what he went through. So we are, privileged to have Ralph on the show. Fingers crossed that everything goes okay for next week. And I look forward to it because we're going to be obviously speaking techie, and we're going to be speaking about technology that's going to be really advanced, anti-gravity and all that. So if there's any listeners who are really into that kind of stuff, then you're going to get a buzz out of this. Really good technical stuff. I'm not going to even pretend to know, I only know a small portion of this information. And the whole idea is that, OYM, myself and Steve, we are learning as much as you guys, as much as the listeners listen to the show. We're learning as much as you guys. We don't know this stuff. We might know a little bit, but we don't know it. And that's one of the accusations that was made on an email. Funny on that was that, the host didn't know, about the subject matter. But we don't say we do know about the subject matter. We're learning as much as everybody else. That's the whole idea. You learn, we learn, and everybody learns. We get the experts on, or people who know a subject, and come in and talk about it. I think that's fair enough to say, Steve, isn't it?
No, I wholeheartedly agree. At the end of the day, we don't proclaim to be anything or know anything. I mean, that's it. We're learning as well. As anyone who's a long-time listener or who was listening to the early podcasts, Alan and I hooked up, and it was just an idea. We had an idea of doing something, and it started off with a small computer and two karaoke microphones and an idea. And the idea grew and grew and grew, and it just kind of went from there. But we don't proclaim to know anything. We don't proclaim to know the subject matter inside and out, which is why we say people come on and they educate us. And from time to time, we might have something that we can add to it, or an intelligent question. But a lot of times, we're actually just relying on the listeners, the people in the chat room, for questions. You know.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And that's it. So we're the same as everyone else out there. We're not open. We don't put ourselves on a pedestal.
Definitely not. Just a quote from on the chat room there. 26 said, "Loads of judges going purple with rage and throwing the book at people." I seen a statement during the week about the judge calling Claire Daly a bitch. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah. Well, no, I wasn't there. I didn't hear it, but apparently it was reported that the judge turned around and called her a bitch in court. And God, if that's the kind of level of frustration that judges are getting because people, litigants, are standing up and representing themselves, well then, brilliant, bring it on. That's what I'd say. Definitely.
Yeah. Actually, I thought you were going to read out the other comment. There's another comment there which I think was kind of poignant as well from Karen. Welcome along, Karen. She was talking about the legal system, obviously. Set up systems through force. Set up schools to teach obedience to those rules. Set up banks to propagate the myth of profit over people, and use religions to teach us that suffering is good and rewards come after you die.
Yeah, we know
Very
it's
good.
all the brainwashing, but, you know, more and more people are beginning to wake up because we have to, because of the way the system is, you know. But listen, we're going to pass off to Vin. I don't know who Vin has on his show tonight, but
That makes two of us.
I'm sure it's going to be good. So we just say thanks for the emails of support, by the way, that came in during the week. Thanks for them after last week's show. We're not going to kind of dwell on that, but thanks again for the emails. And as I say, we're just two guys with two microphones, you know, getting people on and talking about subjects. That's really what it's all about. We're not trying to be anything more than that. So take it easy, have a safe week, and if there's any news, watch out for Yellowstone, by the way, watch out for Iceland, the volcano, and anything like that. There seems to be an awful lot going on as well, over in America as well, and it's just, you have to keep your eye on the ball, because things seem to be ramping up very, very quickly. I don't know why, but we just have to be aware of that. So, for myself, Alan James, take it easy, bye-bye.
Okay, so we have to keep our eye on the ball.
Eye on the ball.
Yes, that sounds like a football term for someone who doesn't watch football. Okay. Anyway, yes, great show this evening. I'm looking forward to next show, the next show, which will be next week, obviously, to speak to this gentleman in relation to all these flying saucers and craft. Something I'm interested in. Doesn't mean I'm, kind of weird or anything like that. Although I do watch a bit of Star Trek. Anyway. Enough. Right, stay tuned for Vin on People's Internet Radio. Thanks for sharing your Sunday evening with us, and we'll do it all again next week. For myself, Stephen George, good luck, good night, goodbye.
Open your mind.